Serverless applications that run on the edge are going to be the future of enterprise SEO deployments, with Nick Wilsdon from Torque. Brought to you by Majestic. I'm David Bain, and this is SEO in 2022. Nick, what's your number one SEO tip for 2022?
Absolutely, David. Well, I've been obsessed really with Edge now for well over nearly 2 years now. And I'd say that the number one tip that I could give any SEO team is to understand how they can start utilizing the Edge or the opportunities that are available in the Edge. It's quite a complex subject, and I think there's a lot of various levels of understanding around it, but I'll try and kind of give you a simple kind of rundown of like what you can do, what the opportunities are if you're doing this. The Edge is kind of how we think about the Edge. The Edge is CDNs, so content delivery networks, and that's Fastly, Akamai, Cloudflare. These were previously used for content distribution, content distribution networks is what that stands for. But they've gone far beyond that now. So now we have data storage, KV store. We have the ability to hold data on the edge. We have increased processing power, and we have increased memory. So we're now moving into a situation where we can have a serverless environment, and we can start to run more complex computation on the edge. And that gives us huge opportunities for SEO. If we take a practical example, redirects, we can start to move all our redirects onto the edge. Because previously for an SEO team, this would be quite a challenge really at enterprise to manage redirects, and not only to manage them, but to have an ongoing process where they're improved. So maybe you're thinking about how do you flatten redirect chains, how do you deal with link rot, how do you when links die off, how do you find a better contextual target for those links? And if you can move these into the edge and you can start developing logic around that, you can be fixing and improving that as an ongoing workflow. So this is incredibly useful to SEO teams. But everything from dealing with redirects, dealing with rewrites, to dealing with schema, another piece of information that you want to add to the page, to even attaching databases that exist on the origin server, and then having that data put into the page and it's stitched into the page at the edge for the end user. So you begin to see the possibilities that you have with this technology. So it's not really just getting around SEO problems, it's about understanding that the edge is part of the architecture, and it has certain pros and cons against the origin server that you're currently using. So the edge actually becomes part of your wider architecture.
Okay, so pros and cons, that's probably a good place to follow up from. How would you summarize the pros and the cons?
Yeah, so this again is a really good question for Edge, because and when we're talking about kind of getting around problems on the origin server, this gets to the heart of it. There are things that should be done on the edge, and there are things that should be done on the origin server. And even though you can fix certain things in the edge, you always ask yourself, should this be where it's fixed? And you'll often find when you're approaching it from that angle that your perspective on this changes. So some things that work particularly well on the edge are, to use the example I gave you previously, redirects. There's no point redirecting a user, getting a user in via the CDN, taking them all the way to the origin server just to redirect them to somewhere else, back out to the CDN, back to the origin server. It's a huge waste of time. So by putting redirects on the edge, you then provide a much faster experience for bots and users. And you can find that doing a redirects in that way is going to save anything up to 800, 900 milliseconds per journey. So it's a very efficient way of doing redirects. So anything where it makes sense to serve that content to the user at their point of interaction with your network, then that's something you should be doing on the edge.
And what size of business should be using the edge? Are we only talking about enterprise here? Are we talking about a certain size of website?
I would say this is primarily enterprise. I do a lot of work with large enterprise companies, and obviously platforms like Akamai, Fastly have quite significant costs involved with them. So this is why you tend to find them more in enterprise. Saying that, Cloudflare is used by a huge number of companies, and it's very accessible. So SEOs can go and learn how to do this in Cloudflare, even if they're not using some of the other more enterprise CDNs. So this capability is there, but it is work. It is politics to get these things deployed and to get these processes built. So if I was redirecting, dozens or hundreds of links maybe even thousands, I probably wouldn't. If some of my clients, I'm redirecting millions. So then, that's obviously a case for the edge. But even if I was into the tens of thousands, I would then say, edge is a solution. But that's kind of the limit for some of those things. But like any project in SEO, and it's about getting things done in enterprise and getting things done at the client level you're at. And Edge is a tool. It's a tool set that you can utilize and access. So if it makes sense in terms of the effort to put into it and the prioritization and the reward that you're going to get for the client, then I would be looking at Edge. But having that knowledge about what you can do on the Edge allows you to bring that into the calculations. It allows you to bring it to the client as a possible solution.
Okay, so having that knowledge, so if an SEO is just getting started and thinking about perhaps utilizing the Edge within their enterprise, within their business that they're working for, what are a few of the initial steps that they should be taking?
So as I say, the initial step they should take is do the background learning. Like anything in SEO, we have to have a good knowledge of this before you start engaging with those teams. Edge is DevOps, it is developers, so you're going to have the knowledge to come into those conversations with. So I would take time to learn Edge from tools like Cloudflare, and Cloudflare published a huge amount of material for people learning how this works. And you can set up your own test environments. You can test how this works. You can do some simple search and replace scripts, worker scripts, for example, to take bits out of pages and present them back. You can really just start to teach yourself this, and those would be the kind of the first steps that I would recommend anyone took, and they're certainly the first steps I took kind of getting into this. But yeah, with there is a lot of politics involved. These are different teams, they're front end teams, and you do need a certain level of knowledge to start interacting with them successfully.
Okay, so obviously a different knowledge set required to really be successful on the Edge from an SEO perspective. Are there any companies out there that are starting to offer maybe SaaS platforms to deliver very specific Edge services? You touched upon Schema, for example, there. Are there any services that SEOs can access in order to be able to have Schema delivered on the Edge?
Yes, there are tools. I mean, most of these tools are looking at how to do this on the Edge. It's undeniable this is going to be the way forward in terms of this kind of content delivery. I know tools like Schema App, specifically in the Schema space, they're looking at Edge delivery. At the moment, they use tags via Telium or GTM to insert this into the page, but they're definitely looking at kind of how they can move this towards Edge. So yeah, there are definitely SaaS platforms out there looking at how they can incorporate this. Edge Compute, which is how Edge has changed really this year, is very new, and this is the jump that Edge has made from just standard Edge with standard kind of key value pairs and very limited storage. So say we're storing maybe 5,000 redirects on the Edge. We're moving to computed Edge, which is a sudden leap to 100,000, 500,000 key value stores and massively increased computation power. So computed Edge is happening this year. So it's still very new for a lot of SaaS platforms. So, but it's absolutely the way I would see them going. And there will be an increased number of products and offerings. I know our own company is kind of brought in to do consultancy in this area. So you're going to find specialists who will help you get these projects deployed. So that may be the best way to go about it.
So you say project. Does this mean that it should be viewed as a one-off situation where you're perhaps getting everything initiated, working effectively, and to a certain degree it's set and forget, or is this something that SEOs need to be doing on a regular basis?
It depends what they're trying to do. Certainly, if we're taking this example of link management, then a large part of this would be set up, and then the SEO would then be using this as an ongoing process. So the SEO team would then have a way of easily managing links and easily kind of having interfaces that are built for them to manage links, upload links, deal with regex in terms of their link redirections, and to deal with those issues such as chain redirects, link rot. They would have a system where they could then manage that, and that's a kind of project that we're brought in to do, to set up this capability for the SEO team, and then the SEO team would then but then run with this. Whether that's the end of it, because Edge is evolving, it's a developing platform. So, say we're dealing with as a something in a system where you're simply redirecting, maybe down the road you want to do something more complex. Maybe you want to, with certain parts of that redirect process, you want to do different things for different users or different people in different locales, or you might integrate that into different business processes within your company. So you can never say that's the end, because you're developing on the edge. But certainly in terms of bringing that capacity to SEO teams, it's very much a project-based work.
So what are the main benefits of doing this? I mean, I can think of, obviously, you've mentioned the time it takes certain pieces of content on a web page to load. You can think of the ability to do things at scale. Are there any other main benefits of doing this?
Those are the two. I mean, definitely for scale, it works. Because you're taking that load off the origin server, so you're putting that load elsewhere. Performance-wise, you're delivering this on the edge, so it's getting closer to the user, so you have got those page speed improvements. I think we're getting into an area where we're starting to realize that there are environmental benefits and cost benefits to reducing crawls and reducing some sort of waste crawls that we have across big enterprise sites. And I can see that being quite a large topic over the next few years, because so much of the web is the capability of the web is used up by bots. And I think we've always kind of joked about this for years, but finding ways to make this more efficient is something that's top of mind for Google. It's top of mind for every large enterprise site. How can they kind of decrease their costs associated with crawl efficiency, provide a faster service, make happier sites for Google, but then as an added benefit, become more environmental.
Yeah, great point there as well. So it's fairly complicated for even SEOs to understand. So how does an SEO articulate the value of doing this to a general marketer that just doesn't have a techie background?
Because you would explain, or you'd look at the specific use case that you're addressing. So again, I kind of keep bringing it back to this example of redirects. There's many other projects that you can do on the edge, but we may have decided that we have redirects in many different locations around the origin server. We're getting conflicts with redirects conflicting with each other because they're held in different places. So we're saying that in order to simplify this, we're bringing them into one place, we're bringing them into the edge. That allows us then to improve them. We can then talk to them about link recovery, because we all know as SEOs that links coming in to 404 pages largely discounted in terms of value. So we can talk about how do we then start to have a better process in place to deal with that link recovery, to bring that into better mapped places around your site to increase the SEO value, but just increase the experience for users who are coming through from third-party sites. So all the same arguments that you'd have for doing these tactics on the origin server are the same business cases and arguments that you do on the edge, but just that's a different way of solving this, and it may be a better way of solving this. So you're using the same kind of business case and logic. But the other case that often business leaders I speak to is understanding how agile this can be. There may be reasons why it's difficult for you to fix these things on the origin, and it may be a more elegant solution to be fixing it on the edge. And it may be something that you would find was low priority and going to take several months, several quarters for the team on the origin to resolve, is something that you could maybe do in months on the edge, or even weeks.
Absolutely. I mean, I've worked in large-ish organizations as well, in SEO teams, and it can be challenging if you're dealing with a CMS, for example, that's X years old, and you just can't do certain things, and you've got no other choice but not to do things. But if you could do things on the edge, then I guess you can immediately do things without involving your own dev team, and that'll make them happy as well.
I'd say it makes them happy. It makes them a little bit nervous as well, David. But and I think this comes back to the original point that I gave you: what should be done on the edge, what should be done on the origin. There are obviously, when you're in those kind of situations, there are things that should be fixed in your underlying structure. You can fix them on the edge, but you don't. It shouldn't be a way of bypassing the difficult decisions that you should be making on your CMS and on your origin. So, yeah, I mean, you may find with your CMS that you can't deploy canonical tags, and it's better to do that on the edge, and that may make sense. Or it may be that you need to think about the CMS that you're using, and so actually doing it on the edge becomes the business case about the improvements and how it could work if we were fixing it. But then that provides the business case in itself for then fixing the CMS and the inherent issues that you have. So it's all about process, and if the process and the solution is better on the edge, it's another tool to deliver, then do it. If you're hiding long tech legacy problems that you have, tech debt that you have with the CMS, then you may find that it's better to have an approach where you're using the edge to provide the business case, provide the real world data that you need to make those fixes.
So this certainly sounds like something that all enterprise SEOs should be embracing. But if an SEO is struggling for time, if they've been perhaps doing something consistently for the last few years and it's not as valuable now as it used to be, what should they stop doing now in order to actually create more time to focus on the edge?
Yeah, I think for me, it's always been around scaling. I think any enterprise SEO needs to understand scaling to be effective. And I still see some large business SEOs focusing on individual fixes, doing their titles, for example, doing their meta manually, doing some of these processes manually. It's not a scalable way to do that. And I think we've seen that especially in recent times in the way that Google is moving in their understanding of how title tags work and the data that they're going to pull in to form the title tag. So try and find ways that scale up. And I think that's always been my advice to enterprise SEOs. If you want to be truly effective, work out where to spend your time effectively. And you're going to find that the tactics that work best are the ones that scale quickly and deliver results for the business.
Great advice. Well, you can find Nick Wilsdon over at torquepartnership.com. Nick, thanks for being part of SEO in 2022.
Thanks, David.
Check out the rest of the content from SEO in 2022 over at SEOin2022.com.